When I was building up this episode, let me just tell you the quarterbacks that the Cleveland Browns are currently paying. Deshaun Watson, Tyler Huntley, Shadur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, Kenny Pickett, and Joe Flacco. On top of that, while the charges were dropped, they signed Isaiah Bond, wide receiver out of Texas, who was just fighting a sexual assault allegation and sexual assault charges. Also, their top draft pick in Kenyon Junkins out of Ohio State, just won the national championship, could still be suspended by the NFL because he was caught up in a domestic violence situation. All allegations and the charges were dropped from what it looks like, but the league is still investigating. Insert. Oh, I forgot to say that their star player, Miles Garrett, requested trade out of the team because he didn't feel like this team gave him the best opportunity to win. Just for them to pay that man, a week later, as one of the highest paid non-quarterbacks in NFL history. All that discomfort easily brushed over when it come by money. This is the definition of dysfunction. What's interesting, and I said this maybe 2 years ago, almost every year for the last maybe 4 to 5 years, the Cleveland Browns almost yearly have one of the best rosters in football. Almost yearly. When you look this year, they still have Greg Newsome the second. They still have Denzel Ward. They still have Myles Garrett. Oh, boy. They have Devin Bush. I know who's on the team. I'm just looking at the names that they have on this team. They also have David Njoku. They have Jared Judy. Damn, Deontay Johnson's stock has plummeted, bro, since, yeah. They have one of the better rosters in football. But they're also a prime example of the saying dysfunction always supersedes talent. Yes, I said it right. Dysfunction always supersedes talent. It doesn't matter how talented your team is. If you're still bathing in the bath of dysfunction, there's always a very low ceiling for your team. And again, I'm not. I felt like I had to say that because this is also the Cleveland Browns that signed Deshaun Watson with all of his off the field allegations. So they're not scared to sign a player that has issues. But they're mm, but they're scared to. I'm gonna see something really quick. Look, the Cleveland Browns have a daunting start to the season. Their first five, 6 games, their quarterbacks that they're going against is Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love, Jared Goff, J.J. McCarthy, and Aaron Rodgers. And then if you want to continue, week 7 they go up against Tua Tagovailoa. Week 8 they go up against Drake May. Then they have the bye week. So I understand the thinking of we don't want to throw a rookie out there because that's going to be a tough start to the season. Even though the Cincinnati Bengals defense is terrible, but then the Ravens defense, the Green Bay Packers defense, the Detroit Lions defense, the Vikings defense, the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's tough. That's a tough gauntlet for a rookie quarterback, right? So I get saying, hey, we're going to start Joe Flacco. We can't start Deshaun Watson because obviously he's dealing with an ACL injury. We are going to start Joe Flacco. We feel like Joe Flacco gives us the best position, best opportunity to win. I get that. But this has been going on. But the treatment of this Shador Sanders situation has been going on ever since the draft. Now, I'm not saying that Shador Sanders did himself any favors. I feel that he could have, from everything that we heard, he could have approached the pre-draft meetings with teams much differently. He could have approached pre-draft workouts and just how he carried himself pre-draft. He could have done that a little differently. For that, I understand why teams would have hesitations on drafting Shador Sanders. I get that. But it was very clear that the NFL, not just the Browns, not just the league, the NFL was trying to make an example out of Shador Sanders, a talent that was projected to be top 5 majority of the offseason, majority of the play of the college football season, up until like a week or two before the draft. A player that was projected top 5 not only goes out of the top 5, but gets drafted in the 5th round. Cool. Clearly, you're trying to make an example out of him and trying to humble him. That's clear. But then you also continue to try to make that example by coming out and saying that a quarterback that you drafted, that you drafted before him, and Dylan Gabriel is above him in the depth chart. Now, it is no question, it is no secret that I am an Oregon fan. I'm mostly an Oregon fan because of the jerseys, but Oregon fan I am, and I watch a lot of Oregon football. Meaning, I watched a lot of Dylan Gabriel last year. And every single time I watched Dylan Gabriel, one idea, one thought that never came to my mind? Dylan Gabriel would be a really good NFL player. There are some players that are just exceptional in college and just not really built for the NFL. Tim Tebow being one of them. Everybody named Mama can see that Tim Tebow couldn't throw the ball. Yeah, I know he had that playoff win, but everybody named Mama knew Tim Tebow wasn't that good, which is why he didn't last that long in the league. Dylan Gabriel is one of, I hope that he has success, but Dylan Gabriel is one of those people is like, you're a pretty good college player. I don't know where we're at NFL wise. On top of that, everything that you saw in Shedeur Sanders, while no, he's not the perfect candidate, he was much better than Dylan Gabriel. And reports are saying he's been much better than Dylan Gabriel in camp. Yet you still have him fourth in the depth chart. I understand saying, we don't want to throw the rookie out there going up against some of these staunch, high power defenses. I get that. But to come out and say blatantly, you've already made an example of drafting him in the 5th round, especially when you see teams that were ahead of you, obviously more ahead in the rounds, but you look at a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers in your own division that needed a quarterback, especially a quarterback of the future. Because like I said when I was talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, Aaron Rodgers only signed a 1-year deal. Pittsburgh passed on Shedeur Sanders. The New York Giants, that needed a quarterback, drafted Jackson Dart, who, in his defense, did have a really good first preseason game. What I'm saying is this. Dysfunction runs the Cleveland Browns. I said all that and forgot to mention that Shedeur Sanders had an incredible first preseason game. Because every other quarterback apparently was injured. So he had to play. And he had an incredible game. 2 touchdowns, they won. He had a good game. The very next day, they come out and say, he's still pretty low in the depth chart. Like, what? It seems like every chance they get, they go out of their way to put him in his place. I think Shedeur Sanders, if you want to throw Joe Flacco out there because you don't want Shedeur Sanders to get killed, going up against the Ravens defense or the Lions defense or the Vikings defense, I get it. But you have 6 quarterbacks on your roster right now. You know how they say if you have 2 or 3 quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback at all? Bro, the Cleveland Browns have 6 quarterbacks on their roster currently. And that should prove to you right there that this team has some issues. 6 quarterbacks, Slim. And just by default. You know what's funny, bro? They have one of the best defenses in football. They have the best. I don't think it's really a question right now. They have the best defensive player in football in Myles Garrett. And they have one of the best defenses in football, but it's like when they're on the field, it's such a drop off offensively. Not because they don't have good players, but because they can't get the. That was that was one of the biggest issues with Deshaun Watson. He just couldn't catch up to this, missing a bunch of time and everything. He couldn't catch up to the speed of the offense, or speed of the game. And then you throw Jameis Winston in there, and he's just throwing picks. As good as Jameis Winston is, he is the perfect balance. Like when you go in science class and you have the balance, he is the perfect balance. He's going to give you a bunch of touchdowns. He's also going to give you a bunch of interceptions. I remember vividly, what was the game? I don't remember who it was. The Broncos. The Cleveland Browns played the Broncos last year, and I think Jameis Winston threw 2 pick sixes, but I think he ultimately threw like 4 or 5 interceptions. But 2 of them was pick sixes. That's Jameis for you. What I'm saying is this. This team is by far the most dysfunctional team in the AFC North. And with them being the most dysfunctional team in the AFC North, that by default makes them the worst team. And even though they have one of the best rosters, their dysfunction is a lot louder than their roster. Again, they have 6 quarterbacks on the roster, and they're still trying to, quote-unquote, humble a person they drafted. Yeah, let alone it was the 5th, but the person they drafted, they're still trying to humble in Shadur Sanders. Which is funny because look at the people. You're trying to humble him with a quarterback room of Kenny Pickett, who we've seen didn't. The only reason why Kenny Pickett has a Super Bowl ring is because he was swinging his feet on the bench while watching the Eagles beat this Cleveland or the Kansas City Chiefs. Tyler Huntley, who was a great backup in Baltimore, but since then ain't done nothing. Dillon Gabriel, who a lot of people, including myself, who watch Dillon Gabriel damn near every game, doesn't really think is a NFL quarterback. And then 19-year experienced 40-year-old Joe Flacco, who had a really good run, was it last year? But then once he got to the playoffs, he had by far actually they picked him off the couch last year, and he was so good he made it to the playoffs. But I think he only played like a little less than half of the season and still was amongst the league leaders in interceptions. And then you have Deshaun Watson, who can't even play because he's recovering from an ACL. Yet and still, you're trying to tell me that Shadur Sanders is the 4th best quarterback on this roster? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Okay. Well, good luck, Browns. Because if you also look at this schedule, past the bye week, you have the Jets, you have Baltimore again, you have the Raiders, you have 49ers, you have Tennessee, you have Buffalo, you have the Bears, and then, of course, you have Pittsburgh and Cincinnati at the end of the season. We'll see how that goes. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.